Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
In this edition of Global Print, I'm going to talk to you about one of my most favorite countries, Afghanistan. Now, you know, dear viewer, that for more than 2,000 years of its recorded history, empires have risen and fallen in Afghanistan. More recently, the big powers led by the US, Russia, and China have sought to play a role in Afghanistan's present as well as future. Pakistan, of course, as a neighboring state, has had a very conflicted relationship with the Afghans. And India, whose National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has organized a conference of his colleagues, that is, the National Security Advisors of all the neighbors of Afghanistan, including all the 5 Central Asian republics, Iran, as well as Russia. This conference is taking place in Delhi on Wednesday afternoon. It's a big conference, and I will tell you more about it. But before that, dear viewer, I'd like to make an appeal to you. Please do pay rupees 159. It's very little money. Click on the join button. Become a subscriber to ThePrint. You will get several advantages and benefits that non-subscribers don't have. In the description of this video, you will also find links, both for an international audience as well as for a domestic one, to subscribe. So don't forget, do click on the join button and pay rupees 159. So back to my column Global Print, in which I talk about this very important conference on Afghanistan hosted by India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Now, here are some of the participants who are here in Delhi to participate in this conference. All the 5 Central Asian republics: Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan. All the national security advisors of these 5 Central Asian republics are here, as is a senior security official from Iran, a very close and very important neighbor of Afghanistan. Russia's National Security Advisor Nikolai Patrushev, he is in Delhi. Now, there are 2 nations who have refused. The first is Pakistan, and that's quite predictable. Mohid Yusuf, the National Security Advisor of Pakistan, has said that he is not going to participate in a peace conference where the host is a spoiler. And he's talking about Kashmir, because that's his reference to context, that India's actions in Kashmir on the 5th of August 2019, where Jammu and Kashmir was integrated into the Indian Union, is something that Pakistan has not conceded or not accepted. Besides, the Chinese National Security Advisor has also not come, citing scheduling issues, saying that they are busy and that they have not been able to come. But the message is clear. China-Pakistan, very close relationship between the two. They call themselves iron brothers or blood brothers. So it's interesting that in a conference on Afghanistan hosted by India, the 2 big important nations who play or seek to play an important role in Afghanistan are China and Pakistan. So let's look at what this conference is about, what it wants to do, and the state of play in the region as this conference takes place. First of all, let's go look at what's happening inside Afghanistan. Now, you know, dear viewer, that on the 15th of August, the Taliban entered Kabul without a shot being fired, walked into the presidential palace, and has since ruled that country. Things have gone from bad to worse. The situation in Afghanistan has deteriorated considerably as winter sets in. The big powers led by the US has refused to unfreeze the account that it has, the aid account, so no aid money is flowing in. The money that is coming into that country is by UN agencies, which have warned that starvation is on the rise, and that is having some terrible socioeconomic consequences. Families are being forced to sell their children. It's really a very, very horrifying thought at what's happening inside that country. But meanwhile, the other terrible thing that is happening is that ISIS, which is the Islamic State Khorasan, an even more extreme, fundamentalist, extremist Islamic terror group, has been orchestrating terror attacks inside Afghanistan. They have attacked several mosques these last couple of months in Mazar-e-Sharif as well as in other parts of the country. Innocent civilians have been killed. And more recently, just a week or so ago, in the heart of Kabul, the Kabul military hospital was attacked by the ISIS-K, and one of the Taliban's key military strategists, Qari Hamdullah, was killed in that attack. Now you're asking, as I am, what's going on? The Taliban was supposed to be this very harsh terror group which had sort of walked into the country, taken after it took province by province. And now here is an even more harsh or an even harsher terror group. So what are all these terror groups and what's going on inside Afghanistan? So the bottom line is that clearly people are fighting for power and for control in Afghanistan because they know that if they rule Afghanistan, then they will have influence in this part of North Asia, Inner Asia. So clearly the Taliban has also a fight on its hands. But what is interesting is that the Interior Minister of Afghanistan, Sirajuddin Haqqani, who is the head of the Haqqani network, and let me remind you, dear viewer, as far back as 2008, when there was an attack, a bomb attack on the Indian embassy in Kabul, in which an Indian diplomat as well as India's defense attaché was killed. Now, that attack was sourced to the Haqqani network. This Haqqani network's top leader, Sirajuddin Haqqani, is in power in Kabul. So the fact is that the Haqqanis, who are part of the Taliban government, and yet ISIS-K, a very, very harsh and very violent terror group, is attacking the Taliban. So that contradiction needs to be resolved. That's the first thing. The second is that while China, Pakistan and Russia have kept their embassies open inside Kabul, the fact is that nobody has still recognized the Taliban regime. Now, you know that all the Western nations, as well as India, left Kabul in a hurry soon after the 15th of August. The Indians evacuated very quickly within a couple of days, took out as many assets and resources as they could. I'm sure some have been left behind. But these three big nations, China, Russia and Pakistan, have left their embassies open. The Pakistanis, of course, very much part of the new great game in Afghanistan, very close to the Taliban regime. And in fact, the Taliban foreign minister, Mr. Muttaqi, is in Islamabad this week to participate in another Afghanistan conference that is being led and hosted by the Pakistanis. So the question is, why haven't the Chinese and the Russians recognized the Taliban? Both these nations are members of the Permanent Five in the United Nations Security Council, but both have kept their lips sealed right now and refused to recognize the Taliban regime in power. Now, one of those reasons could be that the Taliban has not behaved like a mature movement, like a mature group. The manner in which women and children are being shut down from education and all other opportunities that should be available to them as equal citizens of that country. The fact remains that people are being killed, especially in the Hazara areas, and that there is a great deal of violence still in that country. It seems as if the Taliban still doesn't have control over all its people. So both the Chinese, which are aspiring to be the next superpower, are keeping their counsel. And the fact that the Russian National Security Advisor is in Delhi to participate in the Indian-Afghanistan conference led by Mr. Doval, and that the Chinese isn't here, also gives rise to the belief that perhaps there is some difference of opinion between the Chinese and the Russians. Now, it also seems, and that's the third point I'm making in this video, is that what is the agenda of this conference? Is it that these nations, that these neighbors of Afghanistan are going to discuss such a recognition of the Taliban regime? What are the conditions for such a recognition, both at the UN and elsewhere? So there is clearly a lot to talk about with all the neighbors, and India has made this very important initiative by getting all these countries together and the top leaders together to discuss this very, very important issue. But I'm making another argument in my column, Global Print, on the Print's website, and I do hope that you get the chance to read it, dear viewer, which is that while India is making this very important initiative, organizing a conference like this, there is another big problem that India is refusing to take into account, to take into cognizance, which is that visas to all Afghans who want to come to India are being denied to them. Perhaps I shouldn't use the word denied. The fact is that 60,000 Afghans, as many as 60,000 Afghans, have applied for visas since the 15th of August. and the Indian government is just sitting on them. There is absolutely no movement, perhaps just a handful, maybe anywhere between 5 or 10 or 15 people have been allowed in, but nobody really knows exactly how many. The Ministry of Home Affairs, which is in charge of the visa policy for foreigners, has refused information. In fact, there have been RTI requests to the MHA to ask for information on how many Afghans have been let in, and the MHA has refused to give that information. So the question that I'm asking is that if India wants to be a big player in Afghanistan, then why is it that it's refusing to give visas to Afghan nationals? Remember that the Afghans themselves believe that India is a very special partner, has been partnering Afghanistan these last 20 years in several ways. You know already that India has invested about $3 billion in Afghanistan, investing it in projects across the country, in small districts, in villages, in small towns, whether it's building a school or building a well or building something as big as the dam near Herat, other projects on the dam, like cleaning up the Kabul River. So a lot of money, a lot of thought has gone into the India-Afghan relationship these last 20 years. One other very important aspect has been that as many as 40,000 Afghan students across these 20 years have studied in one or another Indian educational institution. But despite this very close relationship, both historical and contemporary, the fact is that for some reason, India is in danger of losing all that goodwill that Afghans have for India, because India is refusing to let even one Afghan come into the country. Now, the question that I'm asking again and again, and I have tried to ask many people in the Indian government, is why are you doing this? Remember that in the wake of the Taliban taking power in Kabul, and when the Indians sent a team to bring back as many Indian nationals, there was also a lot of effort in bringing the Afghan Sikhs. And you will remember, dear viewer, how the Union Minister, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, went to Delhi airport and put this very sacred saropa, the holy book of the Sikhs, on his head and carried it as it came off the plane and onto the tarmac. But these are also Afghan nationals. They are Afghan Sikhs. They have lived there for many, many decades, some whose families have been there for generations. But remember, they are Afghan nationals. They were Indians perhaps over 100 years ago. They are of Indian origin, but they are Afghan nationals first and foremost. So therefore, the question is there a discrimination between Afghan national and Afghan national, between Afghan Sikhs and Afghan Muslims? I'm asking that question. I'm not getting an answer. But the only thing that I have to say at the end of this video, dear viewer, is that if India wants to play a big role, and clearly it does want to play a big role in Afghanistan, and that's why Ajit Doval is hosting this big conference of all the national security advisors and top security officials in the region, in the Afghan neighborhood. But if India wants to play a big role, it cannot deny Afghan nationals space to seek refuge, and cannot deny it hope and succor. Otherwise, what is this friendship? What is this special relationship, this very unique relationship that we talk about, that spans the centuries, that spans ethnic nationalisms, divisions, provinces across that country? India has never discriminated between Pashtun and Hazara and Tajik and all the other ethnicities inside Afghanistan. But today, for some reason, and nobody is giving us this answer, nobody in the Ministry of External Affairs or in the Ministry of Home Affairs or elsewhere. Why is it that India is discriminating against Afghan nationals, and at a time when they need the succor and the hope and the chhatra-chhaya of their fellow Indians, they're not being allowed into our country? So on this note, dear viewer, I will end. I do hope you will find the time to read my column, Global Print, on the Print's website, and do let me know what you think about this video. Thank you so much for watching.